Hello, everyone, and the march to Halloween continues, and we're talking about Halloween again. And today we are talking about how I would have done a sequel to Rob Zombie's Halloween remake, one of the most controversial entries into the franchise. Personally, as I've gotten older, I've actually grown to really, really like the first Rob Zombie Halloween. It has many, many problems, but overall, I think it is pretty good and is definitely a decent step into some new waters for the franchise. Of course, the remake ain't got nothing on the John Carpenter classic. There's no beating that movie. And I'll preface that if you're going to remake Halloween, it should just be a beat for beat retelling and remake of the original movie, not a prequel story mixed in with, beats from later films. But even so, Rob Zombie's Halloween, I still really, really enjoy, find very entertaining. And I do like, and I appreciate the fact that Rob Zombie wanted to, try and make Michael Myers more of your stereotypical cookie cutter serial killer while also still, trying to keep some of that kind of almost supernatural-esque vibes around him. But it just, certain things like the prequel stuff just didn't land for me much with the remake. But again, I can greatly appreciate the fact that Rob Zombie tried something different, and for the most part, even certain parts of the prequel part of the movie, I still enjoy the film. However, its sequel, Halloween 2, I can't watch it. It is bad. I mean, it is a garbage movie. Now, I know it's gotten a cult following over the last few years, and it's gotten probably an even bigger cult following after the abysmal Halloween Ends. My goodness, that movie sucks. But Halloween Ends is nowhere near as bad as Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. At least I can watch Halloween Ends and get some pleasure out of that movie, but daggum, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, some interesting ideas, like exploring the idea of PTSD and stuff, but daggum, this movie sucks. Apart from the hospital scene, that's ultimately just a dream scene, this movie flippin' sucks. The shaky cam in this movie got so daggum annoying. Michael looked like the daggum idiot walking around without his mask, and we plainly seeing him without his mask. And then if you watch the director's cut, Michael talking? What? I'll admit, and this, I know this might sound a little blasphemous, but I'm not necessarily against the idea of Michael Myers saying something right before he dies, a definitive death, but it really didn't mean anything. He just said die, and then and then he died. It didn't mean anything. Like, if Michael's ever gonna speak, it should 100% mean something. But of course it's better if he doesn't speak. But in this video we're going to be talking about how I would have done a sequel to Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Now, if you know anything about Rob Zombie's Halloween, and you know anything about how guns work, particularly I think it's like whatever flipping gun Laurie had pointed at Michael's head at the end of the first movie, it's kind of hard to do a dadgum sequel. Michael's head, it's clearly implied his head blew up like a dadgum watermelon. Michael Myers should be dead. And my idea for a sequel to Rob Zombie's Halloween, keep Michael dead. Michael Myers will not be in this idea for a sequel to Rob Zombie's Halloween. Michael is dead. We stay true to what the ending of Rob Zombie's Halloween was supposed to be, which was Michael Myers dying. And we pick up 2 years later, and it's not just Laurie that's struggling with PTSD and the trauma from that night, but it's the whole town. Even though Michael Myers is dead, buried in the cemetery, even has a gravestone next to his mother and his sister, still the town is very much afraid of the boogeyman. And the town, very reminiscent, I'm going to borrow a few story beats from Halloween Ends. The town in this movie more or less creates a new boogeyman. Now you might be thinking, is that new boogeyman going to be Laurie? No. Ultimately, what I want this movie to showcase is Laurie getting better, her overcoming her trauma by facing it one more time, but in a different form. So we're going to introduce an entirely new character, and we'll just have his name be, Steve. So Steve's backstory would be very similar to a Corey Cunningham's story, in the sense of the year after Michael Myers went on his killing spree, there was an accidental death, and ultimately the town blames him for it because Michael ain't around anymore to blame him for it. And we see him getting bullied, we see him getting treated like crap by the town, and Steve he takes it, and he just gets so frustrated with how the town treats him, and he's like, why are they punishing me for the sins of Michael Myers? Like, I didn't kill this person on purpose. Why? And ultimately, Steve and Laurie end up forming a friendship when they attend a focus group together for people that experience traumatic events in their life. And who's running the focus group? Dr. Loomis. Let's not make Dr. Loomis an a-hole in this movie. While, Loomis was one of the best parts of Rob Zombie's Halloween, even the second one, I would rather like to keep Loomis as a likable character and ultimately make Loomis and show more of the caring Loomis that we saw in the first movie. And basically Loomis's goal with this focus group is to help those that come from abusive families that have survived tragedies like Laurie or Annie. Characters like Steve that accidentally killed someone on accident. Like, Loomis genuinely wants to help with these people, and Loomis tells his story about the regret that he carries, that he blames himself for Michael Myers' killing spree, and then he blames himself also for trying to profit off of Michael Myers. And it just, Loomis says you can't live dual lives. You can't. You gotta be one way or the other. You can't be a beehole and a nice guy. And Loomis says, ultimately, after that night, I chose to be the nice, caring, compassionate man that you see sitting before you. And ultimately, at this focus group, Steve tells his story, and Lori grows very attached to him. They talk, and they form a friendship. And, things seem really good at first, but quickly, people, began saying to Lori, why are you talking to him? Why are you talking to me? He's dangerous. He could kill you. He could kill you. And they keep bringing up what Michael Myers did 2 years earlier. And they're like, if you don't get away from him, he'll finish the job that Michael started. And, and by these things being said, you see Lori struggling with her anxiety, PTSD, and all that she experienced in the last movie. And eventually, Steve ultimately has enough. He eventually gets beaten up and thrown into the old Myers house. And ultimately, this is where the only little bit of Michael Myers you'll get in the movie, when he's thrown into the house and beaten, bruised, and battered, he sees a vision. He sees Michael Myers standing at the top of the stairs with a knife, and, he grabs Steve and, in this vision, kills him. But in actuality, Steve didn't die. It's almost like some transference of psyches, of evil, or some unexplainable thing of the mind. And Steve just has these black eyes that Dr. Loomis talked about, the eyes of a psychopath. And we see Steve ultimately stalk one of the guys that beat him down, an older guy, and he kills him, but it's very, very sloppy. Very sloppy. And after he kills him and returns home covered in blood, he wakes up the next morning basically being like, what? And like the coloration has returned to his eyes, and he's not, he doesn't understand what he did. And, he's struggling to comprehend what it is that he did. Like, he can't understand it. And eventually he meets with Dr. Loomis and talks with Loomis about what happened. And Loomis, gives him some advice, tries to ask him, well, where were you? What happened? And this, that, and the other. And he says, I can't remember. I just remember being beaten up and thrown into the old Myers house. And immediately Loomis's radar is going off, because he heard about the police report from Brackett that a body was found mutilated not far from the old Myers house. And Dr. Loomis is very concerned as he looks at Steve and, ultimately says, just calm down. And Loomis goes to talk with Brackett, and Loomis tells Brackett how concerned he is that this kid, that this guy, 20-year-old Steve, could possibly become a killer, that the town could be at risk. But Brackett, he is like, look, you might be right, but I can't, do anything. We have no evidence. We don't know who killed the one guy. And then as this is happening and this meeting's happening, we see Steve meet up with Lori again, and they have a pretty normal conversation, but then Steve begins asking her about Michael, asking her what did his face look like, what did his mask look like, how big was he, how'd you kill him? And she gets like very confused and almost uncomfortable at this line of questioning, and Annie ultimately kicks Steve out, and Steve just rashes out in rage and pushes Annie down on the ground and says, "Don't you dare lay a finger on me," and he storms out, and they have no idea what to make of it, and you see Steve just filled with this rage in his eyes as he returns to the Myers house, and he begins, going through the house, looking around, and all around there's like almost like you hear the breathing of Michael, like Michael's dead, but it seems like his spirit may still be alive within this house. And ultimately Steve's like, come into me, make me yours. And ultimately we just get this whole crazy climactic scene where we're like, what the world is going on here? Is it some transference of evil, or is it just this, like, again, just the psyche, the deranged psyche of this guy? And ultimately it's now Halloween evening, and Steve murders his father, who is a mechanic, and then he murders his mother, and then he goes to a store and murders a shopkeeper and everyone inside of the store, and robs a Halloween mask that is very reminiscent of the Michael Myers mask that we see during the prequel stages of the first Rob Zombie movie. So not the one that has all the weathering and cracks on it, but the more traditional one. And as night falls, Loomis and Brackett discover all these bodies. It's the same MO, and it's terrifying. And Loomis is like, not again. And Loomis is looking all over town. So is Brackett, trying to hunt down this individual. Of course, Brackett can't say that it's Steve, but Loomis is, he knows that it's Steve. So Loomis is specifically hunting for Steve. Brackett's just looking for any lead that he can find. Meanwhile, Steve eventually targets all the people from the focus group and murders them one by one in gruesome fashion. And eventually he makes his way to Annie's house and he kills her as well. It's a nice, suspenseful chase scene, but ultimately, she puts up a good fight, but Steve kills her, stabbing her over and over and over until she is dead and her guts are on the outside. And then we still get that, what is a really sad scene, Brackett coming in and seeing his daughter mutilated and dead on the ground. And while all this is happening, Lori has no idea. She has no clue that any of this is happening, and little does she know that despite her being nice to Steve, he is coming after her next. And ultimately, Dr. Loomis is there and tells Brackett that he's sorry, and he consoles Brackett. And then we jump to where Steve stalks Lori, and ultimately Lori must relive her ultimate nightmare again against another murderous serial killer. And this time, though, she's much more of a fighter. She realizes that she can't run anymore. She even has a scene earlier with Annie where she says, "You don't run no more. Stop running." And she doesn't run from her trauma anymore. She faces her trauma head on, and she fights Steve. She fights this evil, whether it's an evil that her brother Michael Myers has possessed, or whether this is a whole new evil, whatever it may be, she is fighting it, but she struggles. And Steve, nearly kills her, but ultimately Dr. Loomis arrives just in time and unloads a few shots into the back of Steve, knocking him through the stairs. And ultimately Steve is then taken into custody and arrested, because he's not dead, but he is going to be taken to a prison hospital. However, we have a scene where Lori learns that her best friend Annie has been killed, and then again she remembers the words. And in this scene, she actually hears the words that she was told, like, "Don't run away from your trauma." And she's like, no. And she pulls a flippin' Jamie Lee Curtis from H2O. She steals Loomis's gun, points it at everybody, says, load him up, and she drives the police ambulance van, whatever you want to call it, out. And Steve ultimately tries to break the handcuffs, but ultimately, she presses on the gas. He goes flying through the window, or he goes flying through the window, I should say. And then she ultimately stops the vehicle and takes his knife as he struggles to try and stand up, and she pins him to the ground, stabbing him over and over and over and over again in the stomach and the chest, blood everywhere, gushing everywhere. Then she gets in the van and runs over his body over and over and over and over again. And then she finally takes the gun, points it at his head, and says, "Happy Halloween." Boom! Pulls the trigger, and you see just blood fly everywhere. But unlike in the last movie where she was screaming when she blew off Michael's head, this time she has this look of sick satisfaction. And police sirens wail in the background as Loomis and Brackett and the rest arrive, saying that Lori has killed Steve. And ultimately we jump to a year later. Lori is in a mental hospital after what happened, but it's her last day there, and she is in a much better place. And she, tells Dr. Loomis that she's thankful for all that he's done for her. And she says that, and Loomis tells her that you are the redemption that I needed after what happened with Michael. And then after seeing what happened with Steve, it just shows that, even though Michael's been gone for a while now, the evil that was within him still affects others. But we have a choice. We either fight it like you have, or we embrace it like Steve did. and just ultimately become Michael. And that's ultimately the central theme and message of the movie. You either fight the evil, like Laurie, or you embrace the evil, like Steve. And it shows that you never have to encounter the evil for yourself, for it to manifest within you. So that's how I would have done a sequel to Rob Zombie's Halloween. It's obviously not the greatest idea in the world. I'm sure plenty of people could find a better idea, but trying to kind of keep this movie more or less grounded, I think would be very important. Keep the movie very grounded, because that's what Rob Zombie wanted to do with the first one, was keep it very grounded. And if you're going to do themes like PTSD and all that, I think this is honestly probably the best way to do it. Of course, the most controversial part would be the fact that Michael Myers isn't in the movie. But, I mean, we already did controversy with the last movie with the whole prequel part, so why not jump into it even more? So, with that being said, that's how I would do a sequel to Rob Zombie's Halloween. Thank you all for watching, and God bless.